Okay, good evening, YouTube. Welcome back to this next episode of FPL Family with me, Lee, and this is Sam. And Sam, the unlimited transfer window is open. Feel free to tinker away. The prices are all locked in. You can do what you want with your team. Made any transfers yet?
No.
You're just sitting on it, waiting to see what happens.
I am going to make some, but I mean, we were quite busy yesterday, weren't we? We had. Oh, what are you up to?
Oh, sorry, I'm moving the mic. There we go. I had to move the mic a little bit.
Everyone felt like they was on a roller coaster for a minute
There we go. That's right. I should have set this all up beforehand, but I didn't. So now it's set up. Yeah.
We had quite a busy day yesterday, and I
was particularly at the deadline.
Yeah.
It has to be said.
And so last night I was like, okay, before I go to bed, while I was watching Match of the Day, I was like, let's see who's rising, who's falling, whether that really affects my current team and my potential future plans.
Yeah.
And the answer was
not
really. Not really.
No.
So I thought, let's just leave it.
Yeah.
And then I've got quite a long train journey this week, and I'm going to spend a lot of it
tinkering. Yeah. I did exactly the same thing. I looked at the prices and the falls. I binned Cucurella. Cucurella was due to go down in price. I don't know actually whether he did go down in price. He's been stinking up my team for a few weeks now, quite frankly. But I thought if there's any risk I lose 0.1 on him, I'm getting rid of him. So I think I got Lisandro Martinez or something, right? I don't know. But someone that was sort of due to go up.
Just stop for a minute.
Go on.
Because you've started with Cucurella.
Yeah.
And I'm not being funny here.
Yeah.
But if there's one person that should have been the first person to come in your team during the unlimited transfer window, it was not getting rid of Cucurella. So, the big question, Lee, from FPL Family is...
Ask me.
Has the man, the myth, the man with the most clean sheets so far this season, Danny Ward, 11-point hero, thank you, Danny Ward, has Danny Ward finally made it into the Little Beauties?
Danny Ward is in my team.
Oh!
I'm only 6 weeks too late, but Danny Ward is in my team. No, it hasn't. If anything, it's intensified this week. Listen, I listened back to last week's video, as I always do, watch it back, because I always like to see how he got on. I went off on Danny Ward last week. I apologise. Danny Ward, I apologise. I'm not going to do it this week. But listen, we might talk about it a bit later on. What a change of fortunes at Leicester City. They were trying to put their finger on it and Match of the Day last night. I mean, first, 8 game weeks?
Yeah.
Struggled like hell, right? And Brendan was, is he going to get the sack and all the rest of it? And Danny Ward can't catch a cold and all the rest of it. Now, all of a sudden, they've got Faz come in at centre-half. They've changed the tactics a little bit. Danny Ward's like, is that correct what you just said a minute ago? Most clean sheets in the Premier League? Yeah. Unreal.
The thing
absolutely unreal. The turnaround is unreal.
It almost felt like, do you remember that week when you were on Wildcard and there was that rumour flying about that Everton was going to take down Ward's space?
Yeah, it's done me.
Yeah, but that moment, I think it did you, but it did a few managers actually, to be fair. But I think that was the moment where Danny Ward was like, oh, whoa.
Yeah. I've taken this personally.
Excuse me. I have worked for a long time being Kasper Schmeichel's
I'm not giving this up. Yeah.
I've just got this spot in the team, and I am not giving it up. So
I can't deal with this Danny Ward nonsense. 11 points this week.
I'm going to be like, I don't know, the best goalkeeper on earth. Danny Ward's... What a legend.
Well,
I think we should have taken him to the World Cup. Who's he even play for? Is he English?
I think it might be Irish or something. He's British, I don't know.
Can we get him in on like a... there must be some sort of caveat. We could have got Danny Ward in on.
Can we get him to Qatar? Daniel Banks in the live chat. I thought of Lee as West Ham kept shooting straight at him. They did! Daniel, that is spot on, mate. You're absolutely right. I remember watching some of the highlights, and I, as a Jared Bowen owner, was just finding it increasingly frustrating as he and Skamaka and all the others. West Ham, honestly, 2 game weeks ago, I honestly, sometimes with FPL, you just cannot write it, can you? You cannot write it. 2 weeks ago, I got Jared Bowen in because West Ham had won 6 at home back-to-back. Moyes is making that a fortress. They are looking good at home. In all competitions, they've won 6 back-to-back. Last 3 home games, they'd won them all. They look good, really good, West Ham.
They didn't really ever look that good.
2 of the worst performances at home I've ever seen from West Ham.
I disagreed with you on this the whole time. And yes, I knew they were getting results, but I never thought they
He's
looked
Welsh,
that
by
good.
the way, Danny Ward. I didn't think he was English.
Is he going? Is he going to Qatar with Wales?
Well, the chat will tell us. I can't think of any other Welsh goalkeepers that could be going.
I mean, if he's not, I think we should put out a plea.
Well, as Jeremy Baker is saying in the chat, Bale plus Danny Ward equals USA not getting out of our group.
Yes!
That's absolutely right, Jeremy.
Can you imagine if you watch Danny Ward saving after save after save after save against England? Your mood will go right downhill.
Some of the chat saying Pope and Ramsdale on 7 clean sheets. Check your facts.
I don't know. FPL tweeted about Danny Ward being the. Maybe there was a period of time. There was a period of time, but
whether he's got
FPL
7 or
tweeted
6, whether he's got 7 or 6, it's an unbelievable turnaround.
It's a sudden change.
It's an unbelievable turnaround. Let's say hello to a few people, Sam, before we get into this FPL family live stream. Thank you for joining us tonight, guys.
Oh, I tell you what.
Go on.
It would have been before, wouldn't it? Before Pope did his, that they tweeted about it.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yes, possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly.
'Cause it
Let's
was
say
right
hello
after.
to a few people before we get into. We're going to talk about game week 16 a bit.
Yeah.
Not going to go too crazy on game week 16, but we are going to talk about our teams because I think it's generally a pretty good week all round in the FPL family household, which is good.
Makes a change, doesn't it?
Does make a nice change, actually, particularly over the last few weeks. I think I've managed to stop the rot a little bit, and you certainly have. We'll talk about that a bit later on, thanks to Danny Bloody Ward, who feels like... I looked at a lot of the other content creators on Twitter and their points, and there was a few that have had a difficult week this week.
Yeah.
And so many of them have got Danny Ward sitting there on the bench with their 11 points, and they've played Pope, or they've played Henderson, or they've played somebody else.
It's a big mistake.
Well, you've had a result getting Kepa in on your wild card, or whenever it was that you got him in, because him being injured has meant you can play Danny Ward. Or would you have played Kepa this week? No, you probably would have played Danny Ward this week.
I was always planning to play Danny Ward this week. Kepa, I was planning to play the week he got injured.
Yeah.
The week after he got injured. So the plan was Danny Ward, Kepa, Ward. That was the plan.
He is definitely saving your season, though, isn't he, Danny Ward?
Shut up.
He's saving your season. If it wasn't for the last 4 or 5 weeks...
Stop being so
you'd be 40 points back.
Danny Ward.
You'd be 3 million overall rank.
You and Danny Ward, you need to write to him over this World Cup period.
Why?
And say
He's
sorry.
quite busy. He's playing for Wales.
You've got to write him a letter of apology.
I'm not writing him a letter of apology.
Dear Danny Ward, I'm sorry I ever doubted you. You are an absolute legend. Please continue to bring the clean sheets after the World Cup.
He can bring the clean sheets after the World Cup when he'll be in
You'll
absolutely
have
every
benched him
team. I'll probably bench him. Yeah, you're probably absolutely right. But no, single-handedly saving your season in FPL. No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
You're a liar.
Let's get on to the chat. Scott Schrager, the OG, is here. How are we doing, Scott? Nice to see you. FPL Harry is in and moderating. How are you doing, Harry? Nice to see you, mate. What's going on at Chelsea Football Club? What's going on?
I don't know. I'm seeing Harry on Wednesday. I'll ask him.
Are you?
Yeah, he's coming.
Is it podcasting or is it?
He's coming to the FCA.
Is it the Football Content Awards this Wednesday, isn't it? Oh, very good. Well, you'll get to see FPL Harry there. No FPL is in. How are we doing? No FPL. Liam Healy. Hey, Liam. How are we doing?
Hi,
the
Liam.
Manager of the Month from our Patreon community for last month. So well done and congrats, Liam. Hope you're enjoying your prize, mate. I hope it's turned up, actually.
It was out for delivery the other day,
It was out for delivery, mate. Give me a text. Let me know. We've got Martin Tricky Sports is in. How are we doing, Martin? Nice to see you. Craig Glassford is in. He says, Sam, 27 points. Everything that could have gone wrong this week went wrong for Craig. Listen, Craig, you will not be alone, mate. You will not be alone. There's a lot of people having a difficult game week this week. Jeremy Baker's here, as I mentioned before. Webby is in. How are we doing, Webby? Nice to see you. Tabo Garma, Lee being negative like Conte. I just can't help it. When it comes to Danny Ward, I just can't help. This guy, I tell you, I'd be top 10k if I had him last few weeks. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Hang on, let's get a tiny violin.
Get the violins out. Artel is in with the bitter. He's just saying bitterness with a load of laughing emojis. It is. There was only one way to start this live stream, and it's Danny Ward. He's now in my team.
Watching
I'm happy
BT
to
Sports
report.
score yesterday with this one. Because I actually sat and watched the whole lot.
I was willing West Ham to score, honestly. I just couldn't believe it.
So annoyed.
Oh, dear me.
So annoyed.
Dear me. And Skamaka 9th, by the way, for XG underachievers this week. So should have scored.
That's what
Should have
happens when you
scored.
come
West
up
Ham.
against Danny Ward, isn't it?
Danny, and I'll tell you what, when I actually watched the highlights on Match of the Day, he actually had a really good game, Danny Ward. He pulled out a couple of really good
Deserved
saves.
his 9 points.
He deserved
11 points.
11. Don't undersell it. He got 3 bonus points, didn't he?
Yeah.
Deserved his
And
3
some saved
bats. Danny
points.
Ward, unbelievable.
He's
Unbelievable.
a legend.
Who else we got? Mark Mutiso is in. He just says Sam Zaha missing a penalty. Lols.
Honestly. So,
What are we saying
was
about
anybody
Zaha?
else watching BT Sports Score yesterday afternoon?
Zaha owners, how you feeling?
Because
How
that
are you
moment
feeling?
on BT Sports Score yesterday,
Oh.
when they went to Jules, and they were saying, like, there's 2 penalties, because the 2 penalties were pretty much happening simultaneously, and then they both got missed, and I've got to be honest.
Who was the other one? Tielemans? Was it Tielemans?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've got to be honest, I slightly laughed when Zaha missed it.
Oh, come on, that's not nice.
No, I did.
Come on.
I did, because last week, that man proper trolled me.
Yeah.
He proper trolled me.
Well, listen, it only just went past the post. You were a foot away from making one of the worst FPL decisions of the season. Those that held him were deeply unlucky this week.
Yeah,
deeply unlucky.
I nearly brought him back in this week.
God,
so in my kind of like... So I was really torn on, if Foden was not going to start... Who was I going to? Was I going back to Zaha? Was I going to go to Kulu? I probably would have gone to Kulu, to be honest.
Much calmer deadline this week, wasn't it?
Yeah, but then Haaland was starting, so it was fine. But although not for us actually, because we were in a cinema.
Yeah, we were at our daughter's party in a cinema, and all the kids were at the front watching the Lego movie, nice and quiet with a bit of popcorn. Me and you on our phones at the back trying to get the Leeds team news from Man City, weren't we? It's shocking.
Who should be captain?
It's shocking. Should we move the captaincy? And actually...
We did move the captaincy, and I moved it wrong.
You moved it back to Haaland from Harry Kane, didn't you?
I had it on Kane.
Oh, dearie me. Whereas I had it on Salah, and then because Haaland was starting, moved to Haaland.
Still
so
wrong.
that would have netted out a square root of nothing.
Salah got 2, right?
Big deal,
You're
right?
2 points better off.
Oh, okay, big deal.
Not quite Danny Wall captain material,
but
is it?
you could have had a sensational game had you stuck with Harry Kane. That would have been very interesting.
Should have, would have, could have.
Sam, long-term FPL family patron and supporter Helen Bettersworth is here.
Helen.
Helen is in a part of the world where she doesn't often join the live stream. So Helen, very, very nice to see you.
Brighton?
Is she from the UK? Well, she mentioned here, just as we were coming on, she said, I rarely get onto the live streams, and I just assumed she was in a different time zone. No?
No, just because...
She just doesn't come on the live streams. Fair enough. That's absolutely fair.
Where do you think she is?
I don't know. You told me she's in Brighton. I believe you.
Well, she's a Brighton fan, so I kind of assumed she was in Brighton.
Okay. I just assumed if you don't catch the FPL family live stream, you're in a different time zone. But
I think she just works.
Maybe she's just busy on a Sunday night.
She just works.
Yeah, unlike us.
She's got kids as well, hasn't she?
Well, that'd be why. That'd be why. Helen, let us know in the live chat.
Helen at least moved you to Australia by the sound of it.
Sorry, Helen. Absolute shocker.
I mean, unless she's in Australia and I didn't know, but I'm pretty sure she's in the UK.
One of us has had a shocker, me or you. It's probably me. Let's face it.
I think she's in the UK.
It's probably me. Torben Nilsson is here. Sadek Rahman, Daniel Banks, and a whole host of you guys are in. So, folks, thank you for joining the FPL family live stream. Hit that like button if you're enjoying the live stream. Hit the subscribe as well if you're not a subscriber to FPL Family. If you are in the chat and you want to make some chat comments, you will need to be a subscriber.
She's in Sheffield.
There we go. In Sheffield. Well, there you go. Not that close to Brighton, but I do admit.
Closer than the other side of the world. She's a Brighton fan.
Yeah.
I'm sure of that.
She's got family in Brighton. Yeah, She's got kids, etc. She's busy. She can't always join the live stream, Sam. She's not in a different time zone, as I might have suggested.
Helen.
All right, here we go. Let's get on with some of the...
She messages us on the Slack.
I've had a howler.
Did you not think that she messages us, like, should we have to get up in the middle of the night to send us those messages?
I've had a howler. Sorry,
Are
Helen.
you all right today?
I've had a howler.
It's Danny Ward.
It's Danny Ward. It's Danny Ward. He sent me to the psych ward, Danny Ward. Right, let's get on with these games. Let's go all the way back to Saturday lunchtime and talk about what was... I don't want to talk too much about the underperformance from City. I prefer to talk about how good Brentford were. What did Brentford do so well at the Etihad that other teams haven't been able to do, in your opinion? How did they win this game?
They played better than City did.
Oh, that is great insight, Sam. Hit the subscribe button, folks, for brilliant insight like that.
But genuinely, I thought City were off it, weren't they? City looked tired. They looked off of it. Again, was it that slight malaise of, early kick-off after some action in midweek? I know it wasn't Champions League, but they nonetheless played League Cup football in midweek. There was a slight, I don't know, in my opinion, there's been a lot of change in that City attack of late. And I wonder sometimes whether that much change is not ideal. Because you look on the other side with Brentford, obviously they were missing Tony last week because of his suspension. He comes back into the team this week, which, by the way, also peak FPL trolling, that is. We've all got to sell Tony because he's got a suspension in game week.
It can happen.
15,
yeah, I did the same.
Well, I didn't have him, but, nonetheless. Whereas they slotted back into their style of play, right, with him back, and I think they went up there with confidence, and they went up there as a team that thought they could win the game. And
do you think Tony had a little bit of not in the England squad sort of
possibly,
anger? I don't know, there's something there.
I just think Brentford look like they... Sometimes people go to Man City and they look beaten before the game's even started. That wasn't Brentford. Brentford went up there with a real spring in their step and a real attack in their game.
Well, we've seen that a few times when teams have played City this season, where if you go and have a go at City, that you've got half a chance, right? If you just sit there and allow City to attack you, you will eventually come undone. But if you have a go, you might get beat, but you might win. So why not have a go? And I actually think that they stifled the creativity in and around Haaland, right? Haaland did not get a lot of the ball.
They dealt well with KDB.
They dealt great with KDB. I thought they were shutting him down left, right and centre. They were double teaming him all the time. As soon as he even threatened to get on the ball, bang, round him, absolutely round him. And they did a brilliant job of that. And actually the counter-attack that won it was sensational. The desire from, I mean, it's a nice touch from Visser, wasn't it? Past the fullback, and then Visser got on his bike. But, you know, all the others were still defending. Tony and Mbuemo, and I think it was Josh Da Silva that got the assist. All four of them, like flying up the pitch. It was incredible counter-attack.
But they should have done it again about 2 minutes later. They went on another counter-attack, and it was only KDB's outstretched foot that stopped Tony having a hat-trick in that game. I thought they did really well. They went there with a real clear game plan, and I think that's the thing. If you go up to Manchester City with the kind of plan that is to play a different style of play to how you're used to try to deal with them, it doesn't work often. Very, very rarely does that work. If you go up to City with the game plan that you're going to play your football, but you take out a key couple of personnel, and in this game it was Haaland and it was KDB that they really focused in on, you can destroy their rhythm.
Yeah.
And that's what Brentford proved in this game.
And I noticed they stifled Kevin De Bruyne in particular in those central areas. I noticed in the Fantasy Football Scout members area, if you're not a member of Fantasy Football Scout, links in the description below. We use a lot of their stats, a lot of their tables, etc. on the FPL Family live streams here on a Sunday evening. De Bruyne, interestingly, top for crosses across the game with 16, miles ahead of the next best, which was Trippier with 10. So what does that tell me? That kind of suggests to me that every time that De Bruyne got the ball, he was being pushed into those areas where he was being less effective. Now, listen, there's not that many players that can cross a ball quite as good as Kevin De Bruyne, no doubt about it. But with the I think Brentford just backed themselves from a defensive perspective to deal with those crosses, whereas they perhaps didn't back themselves quite so much to deal with through balls from Kevin De Bruyne. So they sort of not just marked him out the game, but put pressure on him to go into areas of the pitch that he wasn't comfortable in. It was really, really good from Brentford.
They controlled the tactics in that game, and that's the key. You don't have to be. I think what we learned from this game, and you could tell from Pep's interview after the game, you don't have to have better players than Manchester City necessarily to beat them. You just have to have the tactics spot on and force them into a style of play that they don't particularly want to play. And Thomas Frank and his team did that exceptionally well, particularly during the second half of this game. I thought during the second half, Brentford were absolutely excellent, and they dealt with him. They dealt with every attack that City put through and successfully managed the counter-attack, which allowed them to win the game. And that is fundamentally how you beat Man City in the league. It's what Spurs try and do when we go there.
Yes, yeah, totally agree. And I also noticed one of the other stats in the members area where even Tony was top for aerial duels won this game with 14. So and then Pinnock actually for Brentford was second. So what does that tell you? That says they dominated City in the air. They I think they backed themselves on crosses, and Tony kind of taking the pressure off of the defence and really using his strength to hold it up. Very, very good performance. Let's look at the post-World Cup fixtures for the first time in, well, I was going to say a long time, but first time in a long time, Sam, looking at the fixtures from game week 17 going onwards. And a bit later on in the live stream, folks, we will talk about, well, I've put together a first draft of sorts, right? I mean, there's going to be so much tinkering over the next 2 weeks, right? But Danny Ward is there. Yes, he's there. But I've put a first draft of sorts together for us to talk about and to talk through some of the key talking points. I don't think I've got any Brentford players in there. I'd have to look when we get there. But with Tottenham, West Ham away, Liverpool coming up in 17, 18, 19... we'll talk about City in a second, but I wouldn't necessarily say you'd be buzzing to start with Tony or anybody else on that Brentford side in game week 17.
No, but the good thing about Brentford is I think that once you get through those Christmas fixtures, the fixtures then after that they look quite nice. And so at that point, because they're cheap and they're easy to invest in, it's very easy to just move to Brentford at that point. But, you know, they won't always play as well as they did against Manchester City. I think that's the thing with teams like Brentford, is that they will have games where they're awful. And then they'll have games where they get everything tactically right.
Yeah, really good.
And it depends on who you come up against and the opposition that they're playing. But they got it absolutely right this time. And if you were a Tony owner still and you held him through the suspension last week, I hope that you played him because he was excellent.
Very good. Yes, very good. Rithwick, thank you very much for the super chat, mate. Much appreciated. Had a good game week. 74 points, by the way. Nice, Rithwick. With Haaland captain. Many would have captained Haaland. So 70 points, 74 points with a captain foul is pretty damn good, Rithwick. Would have been the perfect weekend with a City win. So obviously a City fan, Rithwick. Off topic, who are your World Cup favourites outside of England? I'm not entirely sure I'll be putting England in my World Cup favourites, so I guess we might be there or thereabouts. Any thoughts for World Cup favourites if we put too much thought into it? I mean, the Brazil squad looks good. I got somebody at work was saying to me, fancies Richarlison Golden Boot in the World Cup, by the way. He's not a Spurs fan either, interestingly. I have to say the French, I think, have got a really good squad as well. It's probably one of those two.
I've spent too much time with Julien Laurent, I think, and I do fancy the French team to do really well this time around.
Outside dark horse, the Danes. I think the Danes have got a very good squad. Very good squad.
That would be an amazing story.
I had to look at their squad the other day. I look at their sort of recent form and how they've been playing. Coming in with a little bit of form, good squad, a lot of Premier League pedigree, top European players in there now in that Danish squad. I think they're gonna surprise a few people, the Danes. England's chances. Should we do this right now?
I think we either go out in the groups,
right,
or we
We've got to get through that group, haven't we?
I honestly think our World Cup goes one of two ways. We're either out in the groups, or we get fairly close to the end.
I think we'll be somewhere in the middle.
I don't see us being in the middle. I think we're either out straight away.
We get out of that group, Sam. Come on, States, Iran, and Wales. Come on.
But that's what I mean. But I think if we can get out of the group, which we should, I think there's a good chance that we do all right in this competition. We've got a really good squad of players, and Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Oh, behave yourself, really. Why have you said that? That's really mean.
What have you seen from Trent Alexander-Arnold recently that makes him World Cup pedigree?
After this, I'm going to show you a progressive passing map. I'm going to talk to you about actual football tactics, about moving and transitions through defence, through to the forward line. And Trent is miles ahead of anybody else in the Premier League. Miles ahead. Absolutely miles ahead.
And defensively?
Never mind defensively. We've got Dyer next to him. Apparently he's the world's best, so you'll be fine. Right, Manchester City 1, Brentford 2. Where else do we want to go, Sam? Let's talk about Trent then. Let's talk about Mo Salah. And most importantly, let's talk about Darwin Nunez. Liverpool 3, Southampton 1. What are we saying?
Can I just start this? Because Darwin Nunez, I think, sums up my entire FPL season so far.
Right.
Because back 3-4 weeks ago when I was wildcarding, I so wanted him, didn't I? And I banged on for the whole week. I did a whole Ohana podcast for the patrons talking about how much I wanted him. And it was an injury doubt. And I took him out because you can't wildcard with an injury doubt. We didn't really know how long he was going to be out for. Since that moment, obviously he didn't play that week and Jesus did. But since that moment, Darwin has been absolutely excellent.
Why don't you make these moves?
Well, I wanted to. It was in my wildcard team the whole time and right at the death,
Why
remember? Shut up, or you and me are going to fall out.
Danny Ward is saving your season.
Just because Danny Ward has killed you doesn't mean that you have to bring him up with me.
He's saving your season. You'd be 3 million arm about Danny Ward. Go on. Darwin Nunez. Is he going to be in your game week 17 team, Darwin Nunez?
Almost certainly, yeah. The Liverpool fixtures are really nice. No disrespect meant here at all, but I don't think I want to spend nearly 13 million on Salah right now. And I know that that's a really hard thing to say because Salah, look, he is a phenomenal player. I absolutely love watching Salah play. I love owning him in FPL. The last few seasons he's been incredible.
Just trying to get back in the good books now.
No, I'm not. I'm going to slag off Trent in a minute. But I think at the price tag that he's a difficult own. The only reason I hesitate on the Nunez thing is that I have got a very, very, very close eye on my old buddy Luis Diaz because I absolutely loved owning Luis Diaz he and Jota are both due back from injury and ahead of game week 17. Both not travelling to the World Cup. So both lots of time with Klopp and Mo working on tactics, working on strategy in a way that we won't have from Darwin because he is going off to the World Cup.
Correct. Yeah.
Bobby Firmino staying at home as well. So I do have this slight niggle that says if Darwin goes a long way in the World Cup, will we see him straight back in the Liverpool team, given you've got a lot of players that aren't travelling? And if Luis Diaz and Jota are fit and available for game week 17, I really would fancy bringing Luis Diaz back in at that nice price point in the midfield.
Yeah, difficult to disagree with what you said. Interestingly, Salah, third for XG underachievers this week. Had one in particular that looked nailed on to go in. Great save by, is it Bazunu, whatever his name is, the Southampton goalkeeper. So, unlucky Salah owners. He could have had some points this week, no doubt about it. And I'm in that bracket myself. Nunez looks great. He looks great. He looks as if he's starting to find his feet in the Premier League now. It looks as if he's starting to understand the Klopp way of playing. I totally agree with you. I sort of wish he wasn't going to the World Cup, because if he wasn't going to the World Cup, we'd have 4 weeks of him, Mo, Bobby, Jota, not Jota, but...
Well, Jota will be back into training soon.
Probably, yeah. So you'd have a load of them that would be able to sort of play together, right? Darwin Nunez, yeah, he looks like a game week 17 lock for me. Let's see how the World Cup goes. If Uruguay go out early and he comes back and is fit and ready to go for 17, yes. If they go long into the competition, there's maybe a bit more of a question mark.
Yeah.
But I just love this guy. I liked him from the start. There was a couple of games where I thought, you are a bit rough. You need...
Not a smooth diamond yet, is he?
No, he's got a lot to learn. And listen, this guy's young, right? But he is quick. He is strong. He's unpredictable. He was top for BPS across the whole game week this week, and he was fantastic.
Learning not to be as selfish as he was. Like, selfish in the right moments, I think. That's what I've seen in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Is that the first few game weeks of the season, just selfish. Every time we got the ball, I'm going to shoot.
Yeah.
I want to score. A bit like we see with the kids on a Sunday, right? But the last couple of games, particularly when I watched him last weekend in person against Spurs, his head was up. And if it was the best thing to shoot, he was making the decision to shoot. And if the best decision was to pass it to someone else, he was passing it to somebody else. And I thought then, that's a massive change in the last 2 months that we're seeing in your style of play and the way that you are in the game. Like, you're trusting your teammates to be able to do the job if they're in a better place than you.
You've got to remember, he had a very stop-start because of the flipping headbutt. He had a very stop-start.
And he got injured.
Beginning to the... Yeah, and a bit of an injury. He had a difficult sort of beginning to his Liverpool Premier League career, no doubt about it. There was a comment from Klopp or one of the players. I can't remember. There was a comment from the Liverpool camp after the game at the weekend where they were talking about the fact that there's this new training style now over the last few weeks and months where they are... the rest of the team, frankly, are learning Darwin Nunez. As much as he's learning them all, they're all learning him as well. And they're slowly learning to play with each other.
Right.
I hear you on the Diaz and the Jota and Firmino's, I think, 7 or 8 goals this season. Fantastic. It took his header. His header was brilliant against Southampton, wasn't it?
He's not going with Brazil. I know he would have wanted to.
Yeah.
He's old, bless him. I think not travelling with Brazil for you lot is good because he potentially was an injury waiting to happen going to the World Cup, I think.
Yeah. Well, I hear all those things, but even so... I still think this team is starting to be built around Darwin Nunez. And if you've got a Liverpool team that can score goals built around a player like that...
Just think it depends what happens at this World Cup.
Yeah, let's see. Also, give a shout out. Not that I'm necessarily thinking about him in FPL for game week 17 or at all right now, but I'm so excited about Harvey Elliott. What a player. I saw the highlights of the game and the assist for Nunez's first goal, I think the first goal. It's so good. Like, the dink is so composed. It's so good. Here's a player that at 19 is absolutely holding his own in the Premier League, in one of the top teams, in our team. And, honestly, really, really good. He's got a lot to learn. Of course, he'll develop, but this is a player for the future. I think we're going to be hearing a lot about him going forward. Anyway, I'll stop waxing lyrical too much about Liverpool. We've had a super chat from Sai, from the midfield master. Thank you, Sai Badet. Good grief, he says. An awful run into the World Cup for me. Please, can we just restart entirely post-Qatar? It's been a tough few weeks. No doubt about it. FPL has been tough over the last few weeks. No doubt about it. He fancies Germany for the win in the World Cup, by the way. Don't mind it. They're always there, aren't they, Germany? They're thereabouts always.
Yeah, they always are. I find it really hard to call the World Cup because, so when it's the Euros, I find it loads easier to kind of call who might get through in the Euros.
Yes.
But the World Cups I always find really difficult because I don't think I watch enough African football, like, to understand those nations or countries like South Korea is a bad example because I pay attention to them because it's sunny. But a lot of the global countries I don't pay much attention to because I don't play England that often.
No. All right, let's have a quick look at the fixtures from game week 17 again. So Liverpool, right up there, right? So Villa away, Leicester, Brentford, Brighton, Chelsea. That is a run where I think you want a little bit of Liverpool investment. You were gonna mention Trent there a minute ago. Do you want to talk about Trent and Robbo and whether you'd invest in them ahead of game week 17? Robbo obviously not at the World Cup.
I just find it really hard.
Scotland at the World Cup?
No,
Scotland not there, are they?
I find it really hard to invest in the Liverpool defence right now because they're not keeping enough clean sheets. So I know that Robbo got attacking returns in the game against Southampton, which is great, but they're not getting the bread and butter stuff that for defenders is really important. Now, after the World Cup, that might be different with time, with players coming back from injury.
Konate's got to come back in one piece. He's got to. Yeah.
Hopefully, post World Cup, things look better.
Even Che Adams gets ahead of Gomez too easily on that goal.
But this is a regular thing.
I love Joe Gomez, but man, he's not good enough, man.
For me, this is a regular thing with Liverpool now, right? Is that every week I backed Liverpool to beat Southampton in this one, but you could see Southampton getting something with a bit of new manager, coming in, wanting to impress. Every week I look at the fixture and think I could still see them scoring against Liverpool. Like if we look at the fixtures coming out of the break, who have you got first?
Villa away.
Right, so new manager Villa, who are actually playing all right at the moment. A lot of
ground
players
one
there,
out today, didn't they? Yeah,
a lot of players there not travelling to the World Cup because there's not a big World Cup contingent in that squad. So, could I see Villa getting something there? Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe.
Who's next? Is it Leeds?
Leicester at home.
Leicester. Oh well, Danny Ward's on for an absolute screamer that week, isn't he? But there's even with teams like Leicester, they're still scoring goals. They've got players like Tielemans, Maddison. They've got players in there that can score goals. And I look at those fixtures for Liverpool, and I'm not convinced, even with the nice blues that you see there, that there's clean sheets.
Okay.
And at the price point the defenders are, it's hard to spend that much.
And a word for Saints then, because we have to mention them, right? Because if you sort the fixtures by difficulty over the first 5 coming out of the World Cup, they're up there, right? Brighton, Fulham, Forest, Everton, Villa, these are all fixtures where you might want some Southampton investment. Do we know enough about them yet under Jones or not really?
I'm investing. 100%.
You going to have somebody? Who are you going to have?
I mean, I think that there are a lot of options at Southampton who haven't been options because they've been so bad so far this season. But again, like Villa, this is a team that they've got the new manager at the right moment, right? They're not silly, the Saints board. They've hired him at the right point because he's got a game against Liverpool which he's not expected to win, to watch his players and just go out there and try and get something from the game.
Yeah.
And now he's got a 5-week period where he's got most of his squad not going to the World Cup, where he can literally just work on, this is how I want us to play. This is my tactics.
So who then? Who from Saints? Because I'd struggle to pick one out.
I think there's a few options. I think obviously James Ward-Prowse is always an option because he's on set pieces, he's nice and cheap. You could have feasibly, depending upon your strategy with premiums, you could feasibly go for him as your 5th midfield option if you wanted to not have Pereira. And I'm not sure why you would not want Pereira, but if you wanted...
He's the only one though, isn't he? Where else would you go?
Che Adams, I think, is a potential option. No,
Sam.
I do.
Come on.
You've got players like Kyle Walker-Peters when he's back from injury. I think defensively, looking at the fixtures, there's potential in there for clean sheets. And Kyle Walker-Peters has got some attacking threat in there too. So I don't necessarily hate investing in Southampton. And I think they're cheap. So I'll be looking to have them.
They're a definite wait and see for me. They've got the new manager. They've got some very, very good young players in there. I like Lavia. I like Bella Kotchap. What?
On an unlimited transfer, you're not going to... For me, on the unlimited transfers, that's the perfect moment to get one of these cheap defenders in, isn't it?
I think there's too much. I just think there's too much choice. We'll talk about the potential game week 17 team that I've put together. But right now, Southampton, despite these fixtures, a question mark still for me. I think they've got some really, really good players. He's got a lot to work with there. And by the way, we live not that far from Luton, right? I've got a few Luton supporting friends. They say this guy's a good manager. They say he's really good. Yeah. And they also say he kind of went from Luton with almost like good graces. You know, the Luton fans, I think, admit that they kind of he's taken them as far as they can go. They're in the top half of the Championship, right? They're doing well, Luton Town. They're doing fine. And I think that it was the right sort of time. I think Luton fans have always felt like he's been destined for a bit of a bigger job. So it feels like a good fit for Southampton, but I don't think I'm going to be going there ahead of 17. But listen, we might. Let's see how it plays out.
I think I will.
Over the Christmas period. So Liverpool 3, Southampton 1. Where else do you want to go? I just want a quick. I mean, Harry's in the chat as well, so I want to get your view, Harry, in the chat. Chelsea Football Club, what's going on? Is it just that there's too many injuries there, or what's happening? Because they didn't carry a lot of threat in this game. I mean, no shame in losing to Newcastle, by the way, because plenty of teams are going to go to St James's and get done.
But they never looked like getting anything.
They didn't.
And
they sort of looked like they would play for a draw.
I agree, and I think that's the problem. But I wonder whether that's because of the injuries, right? So
they need a break massively, Chelsea, and Potter needs time.
They need time to get these players back. I mean, I'm not being funny, but if you're without Reece James and Ben Chilwell. And he's been without Koulibaly for large swathes of the seasons. He's been without Fofana. He's without Kepa.
Yeah.
Like, there is so many injuries. There's clearly something slightly... Sterling was ill this week, so that's another one out of the team. Aubameyang, what is on earth happening there again? Like, so many issues in that Chelsea team. And
I felt a bit like, just as a bit of an aside, I felt like the Thiago Silva benching was... That felt a bit odd to me as well. That felt a bit to me like, I've got probably my last World Cup coming up, boss. Can you just save me for this game? And then he kind of comes on because he's needed. And I don't know whether he really played within himself a little bit. Maybe I'm doing him a disservice. I don't know.
Well, they spoke about that quite a lot on BT Sport Score at the weekend, didn't they? About, do players play within themselves through fear of, and we saw it with Maddison, didn't we? I'm not saying Maddison played within himself, but as soon as there was a slight concern over him, he was removed. Apparently fine, he'll be all right for the World Cup, but they're not risking it, right?
No.
I think with Chelsea, Newcastle deserved the win. They played really well. They are a quality team right now. The confidence, what Eddie Howe has done at that club on the budget that he spent is a phenomenal achievement.
But let's not. I want to continue the Chelsea thread though before we go on to Newcastle, because again it was.
What is there to say? You're not investing, are you?
Yeah, but I'm just trying to get to the bottom of some analysis as to why they are like they are. Is it just time and getting players back from injury? The team that he put out, that 11, when I saw it, I was like, you can't rock up to St James's Park with that.
Who else has he got?
Lewis Hall looks a great little player. I get it, right? He looks very, very good. But, There's
so many injuries. There's injuries everywhere.
You couldn't put that team out.
And you've got illness. I don't know who he could have put out that would be better than what he put out.
Yeah, all right. Let's have a look at their fixtures and whether you'd want to invest in them post-World Cup. Well, they are at the bottom, as you can see, of the ticker. Now, they start off really nicely in 17 and 18 with Bournemouth and Forest, and they've even got Palace at home in 20. So, apart from that City game, it looks all right for the first few, but then as of 19, you've got City and Liverpool in there. Going to be difficult to know what to do with Chelsea, isn't it? Going to be difficult to...
I think it's really easy.
Just avoid?
Yeah.
Would you have Kepa then?
No.
Oh, interesting.
Because because I think the problem for me is that... So Kepa's great. I like Kepa. I don't trust the clean sheets at the moment. I think that there are better goalkeeper options, none less than Danny Ward. But I think there are better goalkeeper options that you could go for in this period when you look at the fixtures. So yes, you could have Kepa and you could rotate him with Danny Ward, and that works quite nicely over the first few fixtures. That is doable.
Yeah.
And it's maybe something that I could look at doing. But the thing for me is, you've got all these injuries. You've got players that, even if they are back and available for game week 17, how soon are they back from those injuries? Because Potter's got to work with these players over the next 4 or 5 months.
And when it's Kante back, most importantly, they miss him so much.
And the other thing to say about Chelsea is that the players that aren't injured have been called out for the World Cup squads. So I think
what's he actually got to work with over the next few weeks?
That's my issue. It's not a pre-season for Potter at Chelsea because they're big named players who have all been called up for their World Cup squads if their countries have qualified. And if they haven't been called up for the World Cup squad, it's probably because they're injured.
Yeah.
So what has he got left? He's probably got the kids to be working with.
Yeah, Sai is saying, thank you for the super chat, Sai. Bad start after the World Cup and Potter might get the sack. I don't know about that. But listen, anything less than 6 points against Bournemouth and Forest, and you're going into, City and Liverpool 2 of the next 3, could get a bit difficult for him. Let's talk about Newcastle then. Sorry, I cut across you to go back to Chelsea, but carry on that Newcastle thread, because actually coming out of the World Cup, it continues to look good for them, right? Or they've got to go to the mighty Danny Ward in game week 17 against Leicester, but then it's Leeds, Fulham, Palace up in the next next short to medium term. Game against Arsenal, which looks like a really, really good game up in game week 19. But investable, I think, over the winter, right? Investable in game week 16.
100% treble ups on, I think, at Newcastle. I think we've Trippier and Callum Wilson both called up for the England squad. I think that's the right decision, by the way, with Callum Wilson. I think that he deserves that. If Callum Wilson can get through the World Cup uninjured, and that is sadly...
It's a big if for him.
Sadly,
it is,
because
I'm afraid,
Callum Wilson, that is a big if for him. Coming back out of the World Cup, I think a Newcastle treble up with Wilson, Almiron and Trippier is great. Almiron not going to the World Cup. I sort of feel that's a bit of a shame for him, because he's in such a great rhythm right now. The World Cup's almost
he actually doesn't need the break, does he? Same as Nunez, right?
Time, yeah. So, I wonder with him, but at least Nunez is able to take that into the World Cup with Uruguay.
Yeah.
Almiron, they haven't qualified. So he's just, I know he's going to go off on warm weather training or whatever, but it's not the match. He's so good right now. This is the form of his life, and it feels really sad for him that it's come now.
His first assist of the season, actually, Almiron, and actually didn't mean it at all, did he? Because he sort of picked it up on, I think, who's it that played the ball over the top? I think it was Bruno Guimaraes played the ball over the top. He sort of picked it up, got it under control, cut inside as if he was trying desperately to dig out a position for a shot, and then Willock was just like, get out of the way, like thunderbolted it in the top corner.
It was a beauty.
What a goal from Willock. Such a good strike. It was a good enough strike to win that game, no doubt about it. But at no time did you think that Almiron wanted to get an assist there. He was trying to get a shot away. And to be honest, you're right. You kind of like that as an Almiron owner in FPL, because he's always going for the goals. Always going for the goals. I think he's going to feature pretty heavily in game week in a lot of people's teams game week 17. I can see it.
I have also really liked Bruno Guimaraes over the last couple of games.
Class player.
Really good.
Class player.
He's been really excellent in that. And because everybody's talking about Wilson and Trippier and Almiron, he's a player that potentially goes a bit as a differential Newcastle investment.
Yeah. You
could go there if you wanted to, because I do think he's really nice.
Yeah, absolutely no danger of me at all taking Trippier out of my team. He is going to be locked in.
You're going to get Almiron, though? Because you haven't got Almiron, have you?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. Let's see what happens to Callum Wilson at the World Cup. I'm probably going to move off of the Newcastle double defence. Probably.
I would do that, because I think there's so much good value in their attack.
They are a bloody good defence, though. Whenever the clean sheet sticks, it does have an effect on my rank. So,
but there are some other teams with really nice...
Yeah.
There's some other goalkeepers that have got really nice fixtures.
Don't keep talking about Danny Ward.
I wasn't going to talk about Danny Ward again, but there are some other really nice fixtures defensively that you could move to instead of having the double up at the back. I kind of feel like, I'm sorry to say this, but I sort of, because I like Nick Pope, but I sort of feel like Nick Pope is a bit of a waste of that third Newcastle spot.
Yeah, possibly.
I felt the same when I had Edison in my Man City spot in the early part of the season.
And they've got other defenders, right? I mean, they've got Shah and Botman and players like that who, they were in the top 10 for BPS amongst defenders. All three of them, actually, Trippier, Shah and Botman. So that tells you a lot about the way that they play. I even felt, and he was in the top 10 for XG underachievers this game week, Sean Longstaff. I mean, not suggesting necessarily that he's an FPL asset yet, but on the match of the day highlights, the bits of the game that I saw, really bombing forward from midfield, Sean Longstaff. So maybe that's one to keep an eye on. Briefly, because we're running a bit low on time, Sam, but Spurs 4, Leeds 3.
What a bonkers game.
Absolutely bonkers game. Spurs coming from behind, 3 times to lead 4-3. And, Bentancur, who...
Suspended, by the way.
What do you mean? For game week 17? Oh, interesting. Okay, well, listen, for me, you can... Of course, Kane. Of course, Richarlison. Of course, he's your player of the year so far, Bentancur. But I think he's been brilliant.
I also think, and laugh at me if you like for what I'm about to say here, but if it wasn't for the suspension, I'd have bought him in on unlimited transfers.
God, blimey, really?
Because I know that historically, he's 5.4, 5.5 million in the game, so cheap. He isn't supposed to be part of this attacking threat. No. But this has become constant now, because he's paired with Højbjerg 90% of the time, 95% of the time. And Højbjerg and him have got a really good understanding with each other. It has made such a difference.
Do you think it's because he's given a lot more license to go forward when you need a goal? When you're chasing a game, like when you're not chasing a game, he'll sit.
Yeah.
As per Conte's instructions. But when you're chasing a game, which, let's be honest,
we always are.
You always are at the minute because you give teams 2 goals head start.
And we will.
He is being part... I wonder whether if Spurs can get back into that groove of kind of controlling games a bit more in the new year, if you can, as I think Conte intends, maybe we don't see quite so much attack from Bentancur. He's only going to be an FPL asset when you're behind. Just so happens that you're behind a lot at the minute.
But I don't think that we will ever this season. I think this is this is the way we play now. We play.
Can't be, Sam. It's not sustainable. It's bonkers.
Well, it's been 16 game weeks, and we've pretty much been playing like this since game week 1 now.
Yeah.
So, you know, I kind of feel like with Spurs, all right, hopefully we won't always give 2 goals away at the beginning, but we are slow starters. We start slow. And then towards the back end of the game, we've got lots of speed and pace, and we're really attacking in those last sort of 10-15 minutes of the game. Spurs are impressive in those periods of time. And Bentancur, I think, for me, is a bit of a differential. Look, I'm not suggesting that he's going to get you 30 goals, but he'll tick over the points if you want to go with really heavy premiums, because feasibly you could say, you know, the fixtures for Spurs, for Liverpool, for Man City are nice after the World Cup. I want to go freemium. I want to invest in really expensive players across my team. Then it is
interesting
possible.
that you want to go freemium in game week 17.
I'm not saying I want to. I'm just saying that is a feasible strategy when you look at the fixtures.
Okay.
And so if you want to do that, you have to start looking at where are the budget value picks, and I think Bentancur could be that. A shout out though for Kulusevski, who
he makes a massive difference. What a top player he is. Top player.
He's an unbelievable talent, and we've really missed him. You know, he's had 9 games in the Premier League this season, and that was his 7th attacking return.
I had my doubts about him when he joined. I'll be honest. I had my doubts about him because I thought, well, he's got to be the running in behind Kane. He's got to be very mobile. He's got to be quick. And I'm looking at him physically and thinking,
he doesn't look like he should be.
He doesn't look quick,
but he is.
He is quick. He's not the quickest, but he's
clever.
quick enough, and he's intelligent.
Yeah,
he's very intelligent with his runs.
And I think the thing for me is that over the last, particularly since Kulusevski's been injured, over the last few weeks we've really struggled. And Richarlison, he's made a big difference to the team. He's great, but he isn't quite the same player as Kulusevski. And I hate myself for saying this, but we've been carrying Son for weeks and weeks and weeks. And with Son being out because of his face, last week we were all over the place against Liverpool because we didn't have the attacking personnel until Kulusevski arrived on the pitch. And the difference was remarkable. This week, from an attacking perspective, we were really good. And you know, they were saying in the commentary, and it was clear when I watched Match of the Day, we defended badly, and we let Leeds get in behind a few times, and they did a good job, right? They scored some good goals. However, we also had so many opportunities that we didn't convert. For players like Kulusevski, like Richarlison, like Kane had a number of them. Bentancur actually had another one which he could have scored.
Oh, how did Kane get 11 points this week? This guy's unbelievable. He picks up the penalties every week. It's a clear foul on Meslier for the goal. Clear foul.
And he picks up
the goal. No, but it's a foul on the goalkeeper.
It was a foul. But then
some very, very questionable refereeing again this weekend.
But then the third Leeds goal.
I'm not sure I understand.
All right, Siri.
Siri doesn't understand about what happened. But
VAR, Siri.
The thing is, that game sort of levelled itself out because there was an appalling foul on Bentancur for the Leeds' third goal that didn't get come back for. So there was 2 goals there, but one for each side that, in my opinion, shouldn't have stood because they were fouls. Because I agree with you, the Kane goal was a foul; it shouldn't have stood. I don't think that the last goal for Leeds should have stood either because it was a foul on Bentancur. However, what I do think is that Spurs found their attacking threat earlier in this game because Kulusevski was present. And I'm hoping that coming back after the break, nice fixtures for Spurs. Hope that Kane goes a long way in the World Cup, of course I do. Yeah. But I hope that kind of the others come back quickly because we could do with just some recovery time for some of those bigger names in our team and for them to just get back to working as a better unit so that hopefully we don't give away 2-goal starts.
Yeah, okay. So if you guys in the chat are agreeing with me, and I agree with it, it's not sustainable. You've got to control games. It's only a matter of time before,
Before what? What's going to change?
Well, you're going to get games like you did against Liverpool, with 2-goal head start, and we saw the game out. Leeds just weren't capable of seeing the game out, right? And
but this has been happening for weeks.
I know, but it's just not sustainable. It's what got Bielsa sacked. It's manager after manager gets sacked because of playing in that way. It's just not sustainable. So Spurs do need to change their way of playing. But with Richarlison and Kulusevski back and fit in the team, you're going to have that front three that served you so well at the beginning of the season. Kulusevski, incidentally, joint second for chances created in the game week. So again, not only does he give you intelligent running off the ball, but when he's on the ball, he makes a difference as well with 4 chances created. Very, very good. And I do absolutely have one eye on him going into game week 17. Let's just look at the Spurs fixtures, because here's the reason I've got an eye on him. Brentford, Villa, Palace, Arsenal and Fulham. The Arsenal game in particular looking tasty in game week 20, but the Spurs fixtures looking pretty good. Leeds, I don't think we're going to be investing immediately because I've got City and Newcastle in 17 and 18. Let's see what Jesse Marsch can do with that team coming out of the break. They've got a couple of nice youngsters as well. I do like Somerville. I think he's looking really, really good. And of course, Rodrigo getting back on the score sheet means that he's back on people's radars. And of course, Aronson, etc. He's got a lot to work with there, Jesse Marsch, but he needs to get that consistency in that team, and they need to defend better than they did against Spurs. Any other games that we want to discuss? Sam, is there anything here? Do we want to talk about Arsenal briefly? Bear in mind we are running very low on time.
Just to say that I will not have 3 Arsenal attackers coming out of the World
Well, that
Cup.
first Arsenal goal was absolutely unbelievable. There's so many FPL managers with Jesus, with Martinelli and with Saka, and then you get a, Vieira assist, Ødegaard goal. I mean, that is just peak FPL right
there. There were so many moments in that game where I was watching it going, yeah, here's come some attacking points for me. Jesus, nothing. Yeah. Saka, nothing. Or at
Jesus, very unlucky. Hit the bar, one offside.
But this has been a few weeks now of this.
Yeah.
And, with due respect, Jesus, because you were great early on in the season, I didn't really want him coming out of my wild card. I wanted Nunez. I should have made the change a couple of weeks ago, but the fixtures were nice for Jesus. It was really hard to change out of it at that point.
Yeah. Jesus in the top XG underachievers again this
week,
game week, right? Yeah. Well, I can see. Yeah,
so
I can see what you're saying.
It's a bit frustrating, but I think now that the unlimited transfer window is open, with Nunez playing the way that he is, and obviously we've got plenty of time to look at what happens with Uruguay, look at what happens with the Liverpool players coming back from injury, etc., etc., etc.
Martinelli's off with Brazil, isn't he? He's in the Brazil squad.
Martinelli is off with Brazil, and obviously Saka is off with England. Yeah. So that there's a lot of Arsenal players going everywhere, so I'll be keeping an eye on what happens to them. But I don't, for me right now, and this is no slight on Arsenal because I think they're playing really, really well, but I do think it's slightly overkill to have 3 of them. I always wanted Saka and Martinelli.
Yeah.
Having Jesus was a compromise that I didn't really want to make, but I think there are better options out there.
I have to say, the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks watching Arsenal, they've just got the job done, haven't they? Earlier on in the season, it was bang, we're going to batter teams. I felt like they're kind of just, a few of them probably just need the break. Not that many of them are getting them, because a lot of them going to the World Cup. But I felt like the last few weeks they've just been getting the job done, and they've been defensively very solid as well. But listen, really, really good side. To be going into the World Cup break after 16 game weeks and be 5 points clear at the top of the league, the Arsenal fans must be absolutely delighted. They can absolutely win this league.
And one thing I will say, that just because I'm saying I'm not going to keep my treble up on Arsenal doesn't mean that I won't still treble up on Arsenal. Because like you say, the defensive players have been looking really fantastic. Yeah. So I'm not necessarily thinking, I'll get rid of Jesus and just drop down in Arsenal personnel in my team. I might just look to shuffle the way that I'm invested in the Arsenal team.
Okay, all right. And the games from today, one of the things we said just as we were coming on to the FPL Family live stream here, Sam, was that actually not a lot to report from an FPL perspective in these games. So no clean sheets, so not a lot of points knocking about there. Some interesting goal scorers, so McAllister and Ings. McAllister maybe earlier on this season might have featured in some teams, but Ings I don't think in a lot of teams. And similarly, in the Fulham game against Manchester United, Eriksen, great for the kid Garnacho. I mean, this guy, again, looks a talent. United have got a real talent here. Took his goal so well. Lovely 1-2 with, I think it was Eriksen again that provided that assist. So very much a Christian Eriksen game. Dan James looked to have got a point for Fulham against his former side. But yeah, not really a lot to discuss from an FPL perspective. Not a lot of FPL points coming out of today's games, right?
No, but I am still keeping. I said this on Sky a few weeks ago. I am still keeping a close eye on Villa because they've got such a great manager now in Emery there, and you could see there was a real grit about Villa today that hasn't really been there in the early part of the season.
Well, I can tell you how that grit translated into yellow cards. Sam, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yellow cards.
There was a lot of
Villa
passion
today.
towards the end of that game, wasn't there?
Well, that's one word for it. Yeah,
spiralling passion going on at the end of that game. It got a bit nonsense.
Having said that, the Ings' second goal is like, what are Brighton doing? Making a lot of mistakes defensively, and I wouldn't say worry, but that was one of the bits of narrative coming into when De Zerbi arrived at Brighton, wasn't it? Oh, it's nice attacking football we're going to see now from De Zerbi. Really excited to see this new De Zerbi ball. Sort of starting to wonder whether De Zerbi ball means actually not that good defensively, because there's a couple of mistakes there, particularly on that second Ings goal. Give it away too easily. Yeah. All right, got a bit of a nasty deflection in the end to go past Sanchez in goal, but still not that impressed with Brighton today.
No.
Or were you more impressed with Villa? Sounds like you were more impressed with Villa.
I wasn't very impressed with Brighton today. I think defensively, and we've been saying this for a few weeks, and I think, I said on, I don't know, somewhere where I said about, I think I wouldn't put it past Villa to score in this game and to look good. And, Danny Ings has barely had any starts this season. He wasn't really flavour of the month, was he? With Gerrard, to say it nicely. He's come in, he's made the start today, got the brace, looked good, I thought. Yes, Brighton defensively have got their issues at the moment, but I really struggle with that in many ways, because this is the same Brighton defence that Potter had. Not massive changes there. All right, they've lost Cucurella. I know Webster didn't start today, did he? Which, again, is sort of interesting to me, because he's been really good for them.
All right.
So, yeah, but I am keeping an eye on Villa, because new manager bounce, same with Southampton. If you can get these players working with their new manager over the World Cup period, we might see some players that we can.
Couple of key players looking happier. I know this is this is an eye test FC, not an analytics FC, but Tyrone Mings after the game giving his shirt to some kids, getting a round of applause, just seems a bit of a happier camp. Having said all of that, how it's not a penalty when who is it that Luca Dean made a foul on? Was it Morpie or somebody in the box? Oh my God.
Morpie doesn't even play for Brighton now.
Oh, that's true, yeah. Whoever he fouled. But listen, it was a stone wall penalty. Absolutely nailed on foul by Luca Dean.
There was a few interesting decisions on things like that.
Yeah.
It was a penalty in my opinion. There you are. Should have been probably should have been 2-2 is the reality.
Yeah.
But there was a bit of something about Villa today that we have not seen.
Correct.
And therefore, ones to watch, I think, after the international break. That doesn't mean invest immediately.
Are we going to invest with Liverpool, Spurs, 17, 18?
But that's
Probably
what I'm
not.
saying. It doesn't mean invest immediately.
Yeah.
But I do think post-Spurs, which is on New Year's Day, I think. Well, yeah, I think it's New Year's Day.
Yeah.
The fixtures are quite nice. So why don't let's see how Emery gets on over those first two matches against Liverpool and Spurs. If they can score goals in those games, then maybe the Villa attacking players look okay for investing in 19, 20, 21.
All right. Okay, so that's game week 16 covered, Sam. We'll talk about how our team's got on in just a second. Before we do, shout out to our Patreon community. Thank you, patrons, for sticking with us so far this season. Patreon.com/FPLFamily. If you'd like some more podcasts, if you'd like Manager of the Month competitions, if you'd like Zoom calls with Sam and I to talk about your teams, then patreon.com/FPLFamily is where you can get that extra content. Every live stream that we do here on a Sunday is absolutely free for all of you here on YouTube. But if you do want a little bit more from me and Sam, head over to the Patreon site. All the links are in the description below. So thank you for your consideration. Sam, let's get on to this weekend's teams. So let's see how we got on. So for me, I got a very small green arrow. So listen, going into the World Cup with a green arrow is good. Kind of symptomatic of how my season's been for the last few weeks. Very much treading water. I've been bang average for a few weeks. I had a really, really good start to the season. Had a very, very good sort of game week 1 to 8 or 9, and then since about sort of game week, since the first wild card actually, since I played my wild card, it's been I've been bobbing along, sort of, kind of happily, just at about sort of 100 or 200k. Now, don't get me wrong. If you'd have said to me after 16 game weeks, you're going to be going into the World Cup, and you're going to be 266k, I think I would have been pretty happy with that. I think I'd have been okay with that. But 49 this week is pretty symptomatic of how my season's gone. Pretty average. An overall rank change of 7.7%. The tail of the tape really was Ben White. Ben White just really saved my game week with the 8-pointer. The clean sheet and 2 bonus points of Ben White was brilliant. Keeping and hanging on to Foden and keeping the faith in him was a good thing too. My transfer in this week was Solanke, so I took Mitrovic out for Solanke. Was going to do Mitrovic to Martial, so in the end was happy that I picked Solanke instead. And actually, when I watched the highlights, I'm telling you, Solanke could have had way more than 5.
Yeah.
Way more than 5 points. He's had 1 ruled out for offside, another couple of good chances. He gave Everton a lot of headaches at the weekend. We didn't talk about that game in too much detail, but I also noticed he was 4th for XG underachievers. Now, when I tell you that Zaha was top, right, so the penalty miss, obviously. Tielemans was 2nd. He's got the penalty miss as well. Salah was then 3rd, but then Solanke was 4th. So Solanke probably should have had something to go along with his assist. So I feel a little bit aggrieved that he didn't get anything more than the 5. But listen, I will take it. I will take it because he was a reasonable differential for me. But elsewhere, a bit of a disappointing from Mo, right? 2 points, although high on the XG underachievers. Disappointing from Bowen, but listen, that was just a bad transfer 2 weeks ago, right? I just decided to have a bit of a 2-week punt on West Ham 2 games at home, and who'd have known they'd be crap in both. Ben White, good. Cancelo, not so good. Haaland, captain, not so good. So for the sake of sorry, I should read it out for the podcasters. Pope with 5 in goal, picked up an unnecessary yellow card on 91 minutes. What are you doing, Nick Pope? Trippier 7, Cancelo 1, White 8, Salah 2, Foden 9, Bowen 2, Martinelli 6, Andreas 2, Haaland captain 2, Solanke 5, and nothing to really talk about on my bench, including Callum Wilson's 1-point cameo. So 49 points, overall rank change of 7.7. A fine game week to go into the World Cup. Yeah. Not bad. Talk me through your team though, Sam, because infinitely better, right? You've gained 10 points on me this week with a game week score of 59. Mostly supercharged by Mr. Danny Ward between the sticks.
Can you stop?
What?
Danny Ward, that's just brilliant FPL management.
Oh, shush. Shush.
So
Harry Kane with his 11-pointer where he should not have had a goal because Melia got fouled.
Now.
Danny Ward with 11 points. And Almiron who didn't mean his assist.
Now.
I'm not sure how you've got 59 this week, but talk us through it anyways.
Oh, wow. Oh, salty.
Go on. I'm a bit salty this week.
What is up with you lately?
Bit salty this week. Yeah. I've got Salah and Solanke who are in the top 5 for XG underachievers. Yet you've got this lot who have somehow got some points. I don't know.
Also was Jesus. So for the sake of the podcasters, because I'll read them out straight away.
Go on.
Danny Ward in goal with 11 points. I took a punt this week on Perisic, and because I had Dallo suspended, and I was like, do you know what? It's a 1 week.
Didn't mind that punt actually when you said you made it.
It's just a 1 week punt, and it was a 1 week punt that was, let's have fun with it. And I was expecting him to play because Sessegnon was injured, so I was expecting him to be playing. He did. I was expecting us to concede, so I didn't bring him in for clean sheets, but I did bring him in on the basis that it was 1 week and I thought maybe there might be an attacking return against Leeds. There wasn't, but it is what it is. Trippier with 7, Cancelo then with 1. Also, isn't that so FPL?
What?
Cancelo sold by like 200,000 managers who were expecting him to be suspended. Then they started bringing him back in because he wasn't suspended, and then he lets in a goal and actually loses the game.
Yeah, all of us that are engaged with the game, like, don't sell him because he's going to serve his suspension, he'll be fine. Yeah. And he ends up with a 1 point.
Typical. A midfield 4 of Almiron, Martinelli and Foden, who did really well this week, and then Saka, who, to be honest, has been a bit of an FPL disappointment for me since I've owned him on Wildcard.
He did have one taken off his toe this weekend by Odegaard. You have been a bit unlucky there. He could have had a goal there.
And it was the same last week. There was a moment where I thought Saka should have scored and didn't. It's just one of those things. And then the thing that I'm most frustrated in, and again, I'm not that frustrated in it because I was always going to do it if Haaland was going to play. But I had the captain's armband on Kane because I really fancied it. And I said it on the podcast, I'd said it on Ohana. I really fancied Kane. I hate captaining someone in the 12:30. I just didn't really want to captain Haaland this week. And again, I let my fears make the decisions for me, and I think that for me has been my kind of learning point. Since my wildcard, I've had an absolute shocker. That team has been promising great things since my wildcard, and they just, with the exception of Danny Ward, it just hasn't happened. And it's been red arrow after red arrow, and not just little red arrows, like massive red arrows.
You've got to be happy with that though. 59 points. That's a good way to end this first stage of the season.
Yeah, and it's over 400k red arrow, a green arrow. So we've moved well. I think now I'm looking forward to, and I'm really looking forward to this unlimited transfer window, and just being able to, with no pressure of transfer, I'm really looking forward to the no pressure of price rises and falls, being able to just move players in and out without
proper just tinkering about.
Just tinker properly like you do in pre-season without the fear of it. I love that period. Whereas even when you're on wildcard, I'm always like, oh, who's going up? Better bring that one in there. Whereas this time around, we won't have that, and I'm really looking forward to just being able to spend some time with my team and do that this week.
Well, with that in mind, Sam, I have put together a very, very initial thoughts on a game week 17 team. So this is
there he is.
What I'm thinking. Now, listen, this is... I'll read it out for you, so, and for the podcasters, I'll read it out. But it's very, very early thoughts. I've put some thoughts there on the right-hand side as to some of the key questions that were going through my head as I was putting this team together. So for those of you listening on the podcast, Is
this what your team looks like at this moment?
I haven't pulled the trigger on these transfers. No, I haven't. Okay. But I could. But the one reason I haven't is because I'm thinking, well, if there's any of the players that I've transferred out as part of these changes, am I going to lose any value on them? And I've got to start thinking about that. But for the sake of the live stream, I pulled this together. I've got Kepa and Ward in goal. A back five, actually, so not too much. It is relatively big at the back with Cancelo, James, Robertson, Trippier and White. I mean, that's pretty damn big at the back. But the strategy that I'm going with allows me to do that. I've gone with Foden rather than KDB in the middle, Kulusevski rather than Son. So again, you're starting to get a feel for how I'm able to get to this big defensive line. Saka in midfield, Rashford I put in there, although that he could be Almiron, either one of those two. Go Almiron or go Rashford.
Absolutely should be Almiron.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could one or the other, right? There's loads that's going to change, right? And I've got Andreas in there still, and then Haaland and Darwin and Mitrovic up front, and this team has 0.1 in the bank. So
read me the defence again.
Well, it's big, right? It's big. In price order, Cancelo, Robertson, James, Trippier, White.
Chelsea, double Chelsea defence.
Well, that's one of the things that was going through my head is, do you really want that, right? So here are the questions. Salah and Nunez. That's one of the things that I'm thinking, right? Because again, this team is very much a 15, right? This is not a team that's going to be looking to get 11 and 3 fodder on the bench. This is a squad, right?
This is Pereira on the bench most weeks.
Well, it probably is. Yeah, it probably is. But the reason I'm able to get there is because I haven't got a Salah, I haven't got a Kane, I haven't got a Son or a KDB. I've just gone with one premium. I've gone with Haaland. Well, you tell me. What do you think? Do you think that this one premium, given you can see the third bullet point there, Haaland perma-captain, is that going to be a thing coming into the second half of the season? Is the single premium strategy the right way to go? I'm assuming you'd disagree because you'd have Harry in there, right? I guess.
I mean, he's been phenomenal this season. I know that you were saying he was lucky this week and with a goal, and I don't disagree on that. But he is consistently returning points week upon week upon week. He's been one of the most reliable FPL assets in the game. It's not Harry Kane's fault that no one captains him because everyone captains Haaland all the time.
Yeah.
But what it does mean is that because people are shuffling around, he does not... Last season, Harry Kane's ownership was ridiculous. And the only way to make him a differential was to give him the captain's armband. This season, his ownership is still relatively low. So every week that he bangs, he helps my rank. So I'm looking at it thinking, I will be keeping him. I really like the front three of Haaland, Kane and Darwin. And I think sometimes it's useful to have that backup option. Coming out of the World Cup, I know that Haaland isn't going, but we get into January. Obviously, we have the busy festive period, which isn't quite as busy this year, but nonetheless, it's still busy.
Yeah.
And then we get into February, and we've got the kicking off of, or into January, so we've got the FA Cup, we've still got the League Cup with City, and come February, we've got the starting of the Champions League again. Can I know that in the early part of this season we've seen Pep flog Haaland, but then he did pick up an injury. So will we see a little bit more rotation around when Alvarez has really proved himself now in that City team? So I don't know. I think it's handy to have another premium in your team, and I will be keeping Kane.
So where would you make the changes? So if you were to have Kane over Mitrovic in this team and have Haaland, Darwin and Kane, which is a very strong front three, you'd pull some money out of that defence, presumably, would you?
I would not be having Reece James. I don't.
Okay.
Not straight away. I don't think that Reece James is a bad option, but I think if you're having Kepa as well, there's no way you want the double up with the Chelsea defence, particularly with some difficult fixtures in that Chelsea Chelsea team, and I don't trust them to keep clean sheets. So I wouldn't be having Reece James. I'd take some money out of him.
Would you have Kulusevski as well as Kane, or would you take a bit of money out of him so that you could have Kane in there as an option?
I mean, that is an option. Absolutely, that is an option, because I think there are some players in there. I'd have Almiron.
I like Kulu though.
Yeah, I know Almiron over Rashford. That save you a little bit.
Yeah.
So take Reece James down to a not. You could take him right down. You don't need.
You could take him down to a bit of fodder there and save yourself a couple of million.
You could have Nico Williams. You could have Patterson, who's back in the Everton team. I know that they're not great assets, but you're going to be third benched every week with a squad like that.
With a squad like that.
So really, and you're not playing your bench boost probably in January. So why not have a 4 million guy in there in your third bench, and you're probably never going to use him. And then, take Rashford to Almiron. That saves you a little bit more. You've not saved enough to get to Kane, and you could then take Kulusevski down if you wanted to. But I do, for me...
The opposite also stands though, right? Because you could have Mitrovic rather than Kane. And Mitrovic is a pretty bloody good option as well. And save yourself, 4 or 5 million to reinvest. Then you could have a Reece James and another premium midfielder. You can have a Kulusevski to cover your Spurs points if you want to.
I don't think
there's swings and roundabouts for both, right?
Absolutely. I don't think it has to be Kane. For me, it will be.
Right.
But I don't think it has to be. But I do think having 2 premiums is the way I would look to go.
Okay. And the other premium, how do you feel about the other premiums? And what about
KDB?
Kevin De Bruyne, yeah, okay. Over Foden or as well as Foden?
Over Foden.
Over Foden, would you? Interesting. All right, well, let's see how they both get on at the World Cup. What else are we saying about the likes of Saka? And I've got Saka and White there as my Arsenal coverage. Is that enough? Would I want a Gabriel Jesus in there? Notice there's no Martinelli in this team. Is that a bit of a problem?
I'd have Martinelli over Saka.
Interesting.
So that would also save you some money, because, I've owned Saka for a while, and don't get me wrong, I think Saka is an absolutely phenomenal player and a great talent. But Martinelli is offering exceptional value for money and is playing just as regularly as Saka, is getting just as many attacking returns as Saka. He isn't underachieving in the way, in terms of his price point and Saka's, there's not a lot of difference in the way that they are performing. So if you can have one of them for so much significantly cheaper, that's what I would be looking to do.
Yeah, okay. And thoughts finally on, there was one other thing I was going to point out here. Yeah, so United's fixtures. That part of the reason I went with Rashford in there over anybody else, and yeah, absolutely could be Almiron, no problem at all. One of the reasons for going Rashford in there is that the United fixtures, let's just go back to those briefly, because in particular, the first 2 are very good. So United kick off with Forest, Wolves and Bournemouth. So I can't help but feel like there will...
clubs in there.
There's still going to be a lot of investment in United over those 3, surely. I mean, if it's not Rashford, then you could have a look at Antony or somebody else as a bit of more of a differential, I would say. Or do you go for a Dalot at the back or somebody? I'm just not sure that I'm going to go into 17 with no Man United.
I mean, I will probably look to go back to Dalot. That's part of the reason I had him. I liked the fixtures longer term. I sold him this week on a pump because why not? But I'll probably look to go back to Dalot. The problem I have with Man United is, again, a lot of their players off to the World Cup. You're going to have to wait and see how far they go. You're going to have to see, because Ten Hag, again, he could do with, couldn't he, a period of time with his players.
For sure,
he can work with them on, because some really, really nice talents there, but hasn't necessarily been able to work with them in the way that he maybe would have wanted. So I think I'd rather have Almiron than Rashford. In this moment, with the way that they're performing, my views on that might change as I watch England over the World Cup.
The alternative, by the way, is it's not that much of a stretch to go from Andreas to Almiron. If you don't fancy James, get rid of James down to somebody who's equally good at sort of 4-5.
You do have to bear in mind that if you do that, who on earth are you benching? Because
that is for sure a
every
problem with this
single
team, right?
week,
Yeah.
like I'm looking at that team and I'm thinking, Kepa and Ward, fine, they rotate quite nicely.
They do actually. I noticed the fixtures. Yeah,
That's
they don't
fine.
look too bad.
But then I look at that back five and think, well, I want to play every single one of them every week.
Yeah.
Maybe not James if you're not playing Kepa, but nonetheless, you want to play them all. The midfield, the way that it is, you probably want to play them most of the time, particularly if you replace Almiron. If you bring in Almiron for Pereira, you can't bench any of them, and you cannot bench any of that front three.
Do you think that is a
It's not a reason not to do this, by the way.
Well, this is my point, isn't it? It's just like I can get a really good squad here, 15, with the single premium, with the one premium in Haaland.
Yeah. But are you going to have a headache every week?
Is that a reason to go for the two premium, to have Haaland and Kane and Darwin up front? Because then you are de-investing in some of the rest of your team, and it saves you that headache in terms of who you're going to bench every week. Is that a reason to go with two premiums?
Maybe not. It maybe isn't a reason to do it, but it's something I like because because the other thing is that these in seasons gone by, you've had to have really terrible bench options if you've wanted to invest in these things. But we've got Pereira, who's never a bad bench option. I know that Nico Williams didn't get the start this week, but actually has been good over the course of this season so far, coming off the bench for a lot of people. Patterson was great for us before he got injured and Everton became terrible again. He was actually quite a nice option in the earlier part of the season. There are players, I talked earlier about Bentancur, all right, suspended for the first one, but at that kind of 5.5 million bracket, there are players that you could have in your team that feasibly give you a less of a benching headache, but can come off the bench and do a job for you. I think every week with that squad, you are going to be having a sleepless night over who you bench.
Without a doubt.
And every single deadline that passes, you're going to sit behind the sofa for games because you're going to be thinking, why have I benched Reece James? Why have I benched Almiron this week? Because you're going to have to play this based on fixtures, is the reality. And that doesn't always play out well.
I mean, what's interesting about it, as I was putting it together, it was quite easy to pull together.
Yeah.
And you know what? There are a lot of options, which is why my final comment there about Saints under Jones, and going back to what you were saying before about you'd maybe have a look at James Ward-Prowse or Che Adams. No way am I looking at James Ward-Prowse or Che Adams when I've got these sorts of options available to me that I can get in my team. I ain't looking at Che Adams. Are you having a laugh? I got Mitrovic, I got Darwin, I got Haaland. I'm thinking about, can I have Kane? No way am I looking at... despite them being top of the fixture list and despite them having a new manager, I get all of that. But there's so many good options for us to have in FPL that you ain't looking at Ward-Prowse, are you? Come on. Or Che Adams. Come on.
I'd have Che Adams over Mitrovic.
Oh, do me a favour. You're not having Che Adams over Mitrovic.
I would.
Oh
and
God.
I'd have one of the Southampton defenders in there over Reece James for the time being. Because, injury, Chelsea, defence, because you've got Kepa. If you didn't have Kepa, I'd maybe wouldn't say that. Yeah. But I think, I'm looking at that team thinking, you need a player you can bench.
Yeah, but listen, you could have a... Who's the lad at Wolves, right? The 3.9 defender. You could have him instead of James, right? Kinder Bueno, whatever his name is. You could have him.
But why would you not have Bella Kesha?
Yeah, I guess you could, right? You could save yourself $1.5 million, whatever. Where would you spend it then, right? Where would you upgrade?
I'd have another premium.
Yeah, this is the thing, isn't it? But it all depends on... The only other premium I think I would want is Harry Kane.
Well, that's because you're sane of mind, finally.
Well, this is...
You haven't owned him yet, have you?
No, I haven't owned him.
Same like Danny Ward.
But yeah...
You'll enjoy owning them both, honestly.
Both of them incredibly jammy, right?
They both get 11 points on a regular.
But I'm not sure I can get behind the KDB over Foden. I mean, let's see how the World Cup plays out. Because Foden's brilliant.
What? Have you forgotten about the 3 weeks worth of benchings and 1 pointers?
Just making sure he has a good World Cup.
Stop it. When has Pep ever done anything for somebody else?
He's one of his jewels in the crown,
Stop
Foden.
It.
He's going to go...
Stop it now. Pep isn't sitting there thinking, oh, you know what? Gareth Southgate could really do with a favour. Foden, you take a nice little seat on the bench and make sure you're okay for the World Cup. Absolute nonsense.
Do you not think it's possible that Pep is a really, really top manager, probably one of the best in the world, and actually does give a shit about his players and their language, and actually does care about his players and their welfare, and that they go to the World Cup that's important to them and they have a good tournament. So he's flogged him for the first half of the season. He gives him a little bit of a rest now. And by the way, he's got some cracking players that he can bring in, like Silva and Grealish. Not as if they're short players. Do you not think there was a little bit of that going on?
No, absolutely not.
It wasn't just pep roulette. Phil Foden getting benched for a couple of weeks.
It's absolutely pet roulette.
No, it's
He's
not.
playing him in the Champions
He's
League.
protecting his players.
Stop it! He's playing him in the Champions League. He's playing him midweek. He's benching him in the Premier League. He's playing him midweek. He's benching him in the Premier League. He started
Unreal.
this weekend because he benched him in the League Cup.
Unreal.
He's every other game.
Unreal. What have I missed here? Is there any glaring? What am I missing except for a Harry Kane? How would you change it? Almiron.
More Newcastle. I don't think there's enough Newcastle.
Yeah, I'd go along with that. Yeah.
I think. Otherwise, you've got the 3 City players. You've got
Almiron instead of Rashford. You're there, aren't you? I mean, that's just not going to change too much between now and 17, surely.
No, I don't think it probably will. I mean, the Darwin Salah thing is going to come into its own, I think.
Yeah.
Because if Darwin goes a long way in the competition, with Salah sat at home with a nice Liverpool squad left behind, by the way, that could easily be the team that starts in game week 17 and probably will be.
Yeah.
Salah over Nunez might be the thing.
Yeah, even so, I just think Darwin looks really good for
Don't disagree.
the second half of the season. I really do. I just think this guy's unreal.
If Klopp comes out in 2.5 weeks' time and says Luis Diaz is fully fit,
does throw a spanner in the works, doesn't it?
because I'm telling you what, if Klopp comes out at some point in this World Cup, or we see them playing,
Well, he's going to be, isn't it? I think
and we see Liverpool off doing their warm weather football matches wherever they're going, somewhere sunny, and I see Luis Diaz tearing it up. I'm telling you now, that man will be straight back in on my unlimited transfers.
He looked good early on, didn't he?
It's easy to forget about how good Luis Diaz was in the early part of this season.
Well, there we go, guys. There's lots is going to change, but hopefully that just gives you a bit of a flavour, a bit of a feel for how I'm thinking, and some of, I think, what are going to be the key talking points over the next 3 to 4 weeks between now
you've got Danny Ward
and Boxing Day. Danny Ward was one of the first in. I have to tell you, I'm not suffering that any longer. He's in and he's there, and I'll probably play him every week over Kepa. Sam, what's coming up over the next few weeks? I think it's fair to say we're probably going to take a little bit of a mini break, aren't we, over the next sort of 2 or 3 weeks?
I managed to catch my breath then, right, as I was about to start speaking. On Tuesday, Jules and Kelly and I are recording an FPL pod, official pod.
Very good.
We will be looking at basically how to manage the unlimited transfer window. So if you want more on this, you can listen to that. And obviously that will stay relevant over the whole of the World Cup and while the international unlimited transfer window is on. There will also be some more FPL pods and some off the benches over the course of the international break. So just keep an eye out for them. As we go, we will continue. I think, Lee from FPL Family, that I might play World Cup Fantasy.
Okay, very good. Yeah.
So patrons, you will get the benefit of probably. I might do some Ohana's on World Cup Fantasy. I've never played World Cup Fantasy before.
If you've played World Cup Fantasy before, get in the DMs. Get in our DMs. Let us know. Get in the comments below. Are you playing World Cup Fantasy? Yeah.
And I tell you for what. So normally I don't play it because I love to just watch the World Cup.
Yeah.
In the summer, without the distraction of FPL, I just love fully investing in England. But I actually feel like this time around, it feels a bit weird to have a break from fantasy football.
Yeah,
so I might play World Cup Fantasy for the first time this time around. So if you fancy playing a little bit of World Cup Fantasy with me, I'll do some Ohana podcasts on it. I might be terrible at it.
That's all right.
But I tell you what, this year I'm playing Champions League Fantasy, and I've really enjoyed that this season.
Good game.
Really enjoying playing that. That's the first time I've played that as well. So I think there might be some World Cup Fantasy that I put out over the next few weeks, maybe.
Very good. All right, so there we go. But in terms of these live streams, probably going to have a little 2 or 3 week hiatus, I suggest, on a Sunday evening.
After the group stages, maybe after the quarters, and do a little
something like
where are unlimited transfer teams, what are they looking like?
Maybe a video or two are right here on the FPL Family channel. So if you're not subscribed yet, now is a really good time to subscribe, because when that content goes live, you will know. You'll be one of the first to see and listen to it. So yes, well done in game week 16. Well done for the first. We're calling this the first half of the season. I guess we probably are, aren't we? So game week 16 game weeks are in the bag. Loads of time still to go in this season, guys. If your rank is not where you want it to be, do not worry. There is loads of time still to go. And as we've said on a few times on these live streams, it is still very close together. There's not much. It doesn't take. Only takes a Ben White 8-pointer to save your game week,
Or
as
Danny
I
Ward.
found out, or Danny Ward
To kill it.
11-pointer to kill it. Yeah, no longer he's in my team. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the live stream tonight. Leave us a like before you go. Hit that subscribe button so that you know when some of our FPL content over the World Cup break is live. Good luck to all the nations that are playing in Qatar. In particular, particular Southgate's England. I would love them to do well. And Eric Dyer to do well. Let's see how they do. I've got relatively low expectations, but
I think it's coming home.
Let's hope that the boys can bring it home.
Free lines.
Good luck to everybody playing World Cup Fantasy as well. And we'll see you soon, guys. Thanks a lot for joining us and speak soon.
Bye, guys.